Real. I'm the data administrator for special education, and I'm joined here with
Jenny Singh, and I'm the administrator for the accountability unit.
And Paula Bashima, I'm with the Educational Data Management Division, of which CalPAS is under.
And we have several other CDE staff in the room. And we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
My name is Katrina Wyatt. I am a consultant underneath Jenny Singh's unit.
Siva Salovich, also a consultant under Jenny.
Oh, my name is Manami Sunaga. I'm the intern at the Academic Accountability Unit.
Betty Muir, also consultant in the Academic Accountability Unit.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about a couple of things around monitoring and accountability under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and why there's some discussion about, and I think a need to align some of our practices across our accountability and monitoring. We'll be talking about the academic indicator and the changes we intend to make on the 2019 dashboard, and that includes students with disabilities in District of Residence or District of Special Accountability, rules for students with disabilities who exit special education, and the incorporation of the California alternate assessment into the academic indicator. We are asking people to put their questions into the chat. And so as they come up, we will kind of pause when we kind of feel a natural pause and go through questions, and then we'll try and go through questions. There are well over 300 people on this webinar, and so we may not get to every single question that's out there, because when they start coming, they tend to come really fast and furious. And so we will do our best, but if we didn't get to your question, it was not because we didn't like you, it's just because we were kind of inundated at that moment. We will try and go through all the questions afterwards and see if there's anything we need to respond to later on. So thank you so much for your patience with that. So I always like to start with sort of a little understanding of what we are required to do under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And so the primary focus of the state's monitoring activities should always be around improving educational results and functional outcomes. So that's a big part of what we do, is to monitor how districts are doing improving outcomes for students with disabilities. This is the idea behind the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, is that you are able to provide supports and services to children who need them so they can access the curriculum and make progress and gains and be successful in life. That is the whole purpose, and I think we can all agree that's what we want to do. And so our job at the state is to identify LEAs who are struggling in that area and help support them. We also have to ensure that LEAs are meeting the program requirements, and that's a lot of those compliance elements, right? When we talk about compliance, holding a regular IEP, ensuring that there's not any disproportionate representation, there's not practices in a district that leads to disproportionate representation. Looking at a number of procedural requirements. So we do that as well, looking at the compliance elements. So monitoring under IDEA through the state is both a results and outcomes focused endeavor, but also a focus on compliance. So there isn't one or the other, it's both that we look at. And this will become important when we're kind of talking a little bit how we look at things in the accountability system. So we have a number of areas that we look at under IDEA, and that's the provision of a free and appropriate public education, which you may often hear that referred to as FAPE, in a least restrictive environment. We have to look at things like child find, effective monitoring, the use of resolution sessions, mediation, when parties aren't getting along, and a system of transition services as students move from their high school environment into college and career. And then disproportionate representation of racial or ethnic groups in special education. So are we identifying more students? Are we suspending more students? Are we placing more students in restrictive environments based on race and ethnicity and not because of what their needs are? So those are the things that we really focus on in terms of our monitoring priorities. And so both of our outcomes monitoring and our compliance monitoring are focused on these elements. So this is what, if you ever wonder what the Special Education Division does, here we go. We do different levels of monitoring. You can see this is very similar to our accountability systems levels of monitoring. So we have a universal monitoring where we look at data. We do provide technical support. We provide technical resources to all LEAs regardless of their need. We do a set of targeted monitoring, which is the data identified noncompliance, where we look at data to determine if you have late IEPs, late or incomplete IEPs. We look at disproportionality over 1 year. And we look at performance elements like assessment, least restrictive environment, parent input, and post-school outcomes. And so we identify a set of districts where we target our monitoring towards those specific areas. We also identify a number of districts, a smaller number of districts, who receive intensive monitoring. So we do on-site comprehensive reviews because they need an intense level of support, or they might be subject to something called significant disproportionality, which means they've had disproportionality over 3 years, and now there's a fiscal consequence where we need to monitor their policies and practices more. So before I go on, I want to see if there are any questions about any of that. No? Okay, we'll continue on. I didn't give people a lot of time to ask questions, but put them in the thing, we'll try and get to them. So which entity is responsible for students with disabilities? And so if you look under the 34 Code of Federal Regulations 300.201, you can see that the LEA, in providing education for children with disabilities within its jurisdiction, must have policies, procedures, and programs that are consistent with state policies and procedures. So those are the work that we do. And so that really says within jurisdiction you have to be able to do child find, least restrictive environment placement, a number of sets of mediation. And so when we look at what jurisdiction means, that's identified within our California Education Code that each person is subject to a compulsory full-time education, and I'm going to skip over a little bit, of the school district in which the residency of either the parent or legal guardian. So that really says to us that when we look at where the responsibility for programs and supports for students with disabilities and identifying students with disabilities, that lies with the district of residence. So let's talk about why this is sometimes different for students with disabilities. So in this picture you see we actually fund the District of Special Education Accountability. That is either the district of residence or the charter school the child attends that is an LEA for the purposes of special education. And if you're a charter school that is one of those, you know you are them, so it's not a question. But basically that's how we fund the dollars for special education, is directly to the District of Special Education Accountability, which is for most children, about 90% of students with disabilities, that's going to be the district right next to their house. Sometimes there are instances where that district cannot or does not currently have the programs or resources available to serve that child. They don't have a fully inclusive program for students with autism. They don't have a deaf and hard of hearing program. And to build that up and create that, which is the best practice and the most ideal, would take time. And so they have a student who has needs now, and so they need to identify where and how they can serve that child now. And so what they do is they contact a neighboring LEA, typically, or a county office, and the child is then contracted to go to that LEA. And that becomes sort of their district of service, is what we have talked about. And it is not a inter-district transfer, because the responsibilities for that child's education still lies with the District of Special Education Accountability. They're just attending another school district that can meet their needs. And so what happens, though, in CalPADS, and I probably needed another arrow on this page, but I will get it up. Is the next slide on there? No. Oh. And so what happens, though, is that the reporting LEA is the one who reports their CalPADS data. And so there has been sort of a mix of understanding about who's responsible for a child. And so we wanted to kind of walk you through this so you would understand how this works. Okay. So the student's special district of special education. So there's different ways that a district of special education accountability is determined. It's the district of geographic residence, and again, for about 90% of kids, again, it's the district that is right next to their house. Right? So my son we live in our, where we live. He walks down the street every day to go to school. That's his district of, not that school, but the school the district that has that school, that's our district of residence and also our district of special ed accountability. The other option is it's outside the district of geographic residence, and that and so the district of special education accountability there is the interdistrict transfer doesn't always apply for students with disabilities. For all other students, if you go to another district, you do an interdistrict transfer. But in this instance, you don't, for students with disabilities who are just being served by another district, they wouldn't do an interdistrict transfer. The other ways that a child can attend a district outside of their geographic district is if they attend a charter school. And then third is if they are a ward of the court or housed in a juvenile court or community school. The District of Special Education Accountability at that point becomes the County Office of Education. So the student is a ward of the court. If the student is a ward of court and they're housed in an adult correctional facility, then the county district code is the district that was last responsible for the student's IEP, and that is based on a lot of court cases that have come through and some guidance from the U.S. Department of Education. Now, for a student who's in a private school and they have an individualized service plan, the public school district where the private school is located is the District of Special Ed Accountability. So you can see how sometimes these rules can be complicated and sometimes it can be a little bit confusing for folks. So let me go back to my picture. That was my pictures. I'm a visual person. So again, where typically the IDEA dollars flow is the District of Special Education Accountability, and that might be so for 90% of students, it's the district where they go next to their house. There are some students who attend charter schools who are LEAs. There are some students who may enter into an interdistrict transfer, but that's rare for students with disabilities. There are some students who are wards of the court and are in a court and community school. And in those instances, the county office becomes their district of residence, the District of Special Education Accountability. We wanted to kind of walk you through this so you would understand some of these issues around why this has gotten a little bit complicated. So let's talk about our monitoring. So remember a few slides ago, I showed you the universal monitoring, the targeted monitoring, the intensive monitoring. We do almost all of our monitoring by District of Special Education Accountability in the Special Ed Division. So when we identify a district as being disproportionate, as needing support under a performance indicator, or as being significantly disproportionate, or needing a very intensive level of review known as comprehensive review, it is always based on the District of Special Education Accountability. Now, there has been a little bit of concern because a lot of our work in accountability is based on reporting LEA. And that's why I want to walk you through this, because that's where we are seeing some of the disconnect. So let's talk about how it works in the accountability system. Currently, do you want to go through this or do you want me to?
Well, I can go through it. So most of the stuff that is on the slide is a repeat of what Shiloh has already said. But we just wanted to be really clear on how we look at, we're really clear what the options are for districts. So we do know that there are some districts they might have a student that they really can't provide the services to that student. They don't have the expertise. So they enter into a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU. So in the accountability unit, we're looking at where these students could go. And one place where they can go is to another district, right? They can go to the district next door, or district maybe, further away, but they can go to another district, and they can go to a special education school in another district. And when we say special education school, those are the schools that are actually identified in our directory under a code that says they're serving only students with disabilities. Or they can go to a non-special education school in another district. So there might be a program on that particular school site that that student is participating in. They could also go to the County Office of Education. And most of the county offices of education, if they go there, they are attending a special education school, one that has a school code that says they serve special ed students. Or they could go to a non-public school. We refer to that as NPS.
So we do have a couple of questions that I wanted to get before we sort of jump into the accountability piece, because I'm sure there's going to be a whole different set of questions there. So we are a charter school, but the special education services are provided by the district. The charter school still has accountability, correct? Excuse me. Yes, that is correct. Under LCFS, all charter schools became their own LEAs, and so even if the district is providing the services for them, we in the special ed division still hold the IDEA accountability at the charter school. It's a shared accountability, and we hope that they're working with their districts to make that happen, but it is a shared level of accountability. What about students in juvenile hall or juveniles on house arrest? So students who are in juvenile hall or who are in juvenile court schools, those students would be, their district of special education accountability is a little bit, it's not gray, but it's tough, because a lot of times students don't spend a lot of time in a juvenile hall. So if they're only there for 3 days, we don't expect that the district of special education accountability change. If they are there for a longer period of time, typically the time it takes for an interim IEP to occur, so that's 30 days, then you would change the district of special education accountability, because the requirements of IDEA are still in place. But if a student gets, does something, if a child does something like on a Friday and is juvenile hall like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then they go back to their school on Tuesday, you wouldn't change the district of special education accountability. Is there one more? So if a child is attending a charter and has a disability, is the charter responsibility to pay for services, or is it their district of residence? So this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So we hold the monitoring at the charter school level. However, the funding will go to the district of residence unless that charter school is a LEA for the purposes of special education, which means they have applied to the CDE to be part of a local plan under a special education local plan area. And if you are a charter school that does that, you know you are. There isn't question about that. But if the district is providing services and holding the IEP, then the funding goes to them. And so they're responsible for funding the services. But the accountability is really a shared accountability. So does the juvenile hall school have to switch the district of special education accountability manually when the student completes greater than 30 days with the school, or does CalPAS automatically know to transfer the accountability? No, we do not. You give CalPAS a lot of credit. We do not automatically know. You should know. If you're holding an IEP for a child who's been in a juvenile court school or a juvenile hall for around 30 days or more, then you are holding an IEP. You have to legally hold an IEP by 30 days. And so, so you should be changing the data to show that it's a district, that the county office is now the district of special accountability. I will tell you, this juvenile hall, juvenile court scheme continues to come up, and I think it's something we'll be talking more to provide some more clear guidance in the future on. And it's an issue at special ed. Okay, so we're going to continue on. I don't see any additional questions, but keep them coming. These are excellent questions. Okay, so Jenny?
Okay, so for accountability purposes, which entity is held accountable for students with disabilities? And we're going to break this up into two parts. Those that are non-academic indicators, and for the academic indicators is separate. But before I go on, it's really important to know that in most cases, we hold two entities accountable. We hold the school where the services are provided accountable, and then we hold an LEA accountable. Now, there is an exception to that rule. The exception to that rule is if we have a charter school or a single school district. So if we have a charter school or a single school district,
We're just moving the microphone a little bit closer to Jenny so everyone can hear her brilliant.
so if you're a charter school, you are considered an LEA under LCFF. So for dashboard purposes, that is the only place we're holding, the only entity we're holding accountable, because they are the school and the LEA. That's true with a single school district as well. But in most cases, we're holding two entities accountable, the school of service and an LEA. So for non-academic indicators, we are holding the school of attendance or school of service and the LEA of attendance or the LEA of service are going to be held accountable for the suspension, chronic absenteeism, the graduation rate, and the college and career indicator. So for the academic indicator, it's a little bit different. So for the academic indicator, we're looking at the school level. Again, we are holding the school of attendance or the school of service accountable. When we're looking at a district or county level accountability, it depends on multiple factors. So for the academic indicator only, if a student receives services from a special education school, and that is, they have the school code that says they're a special education school, what we call the ownership code, or a non-public school, NPS, the assessment results are sent back to the District of Special Education Accountability. So they'll go back into that dashboard. This is not new. This is something we've been doing in accountability for a very long time. We did it with API, with our former accountability system of the API and AYP. So this is something we've been doing for a long time because we've always worked with our colleagues in the Special Education Division, and it was very clear that those are the districts of accountability, or the district of residence, is the person who is responsible for the academic achievement of the students. So what this means is that when we're looking at county offices, most of the students who are attending the county office who are special ed, if they're in these special ed schools, are sent back to the district of residence or the district of accountability. We get questions sometimes from county offices saying, well, I had like 300 students, but you've got 50 students on my dashboard for the academic indicator. Why do I only have 50 and not 300? Well, we sent all the students who had a valid CDS code in the district of residence field in CalPADS back to their district of residence or the district of accountability. Those that did not have a valid CDS code in that field were not sent back. So kind of important to make sure that you complete this information in CalPADS, and we'll go through that a little bit more later on. So we already have this rule in place that we've been doing for a long time. So we really want to align with how we do the monitoring under special education. So we want to do that in 2 phases. So our first phase is going to be expanding the rule for the 2019 dashboard for the academic indicator.
So as you can imagine, when the dashboard came out and we were trying to sort of align a lot of our monitoring practices, a number of districts said, wait a second, the numbers that you're giving me, the number of students with disabilities that I have, are different from what's on the dashboard. Why isn't this the same? Additionally, a number of county offices were identified for differentiated assistance based on their students with disabilities who were attending their county programs, but were really their statutory responsibility was with the district of residence. So there was sort of this discussion about, wait a second, we seem to have some rules that are butting up against each other, and so how do we address this? So we've been working and talking about what's the best way to do this, and the best way I think we've talked about is to sort of a step approach. And so the first step is to expand, for the academic year only, expand the District of Special Education Accountability for all students with disabilities. And so basically, if you have a student with a disability that attends your district but is the District of Special Education Accountability somewhere else, the scores for their academic indicator will go back into that district, the sending district, for accountability purposes. Do you want to expand on that? Did I explain that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. So it's really important to understand that we're not just going to be looking at students who are attending a special education school that has that school type. We're also looking at all students with disabilities who have an MOU. So if you have students who are attending another district and they're attending a program on a school campus and you have an MOU with that district, that student will now go back to the District of Accountability or District of Residence.
Just a couple of questions. The academic services, who was responsible for accountability? Well, just as Jenny described, it's 2 levels, right? So we see this at the school level. The school where the child is attending is responsible for sort of like the day-to-day education. And so in their dashboard, the students with disabilities who attend those schools, regardless of where they come from, the accountability will be asked for that, where they attend that school. Now, when it goes up to the district level, the accountability for the academic indicator only this year will go back to their District of Special Education Accountability. Somebody else asked, so if I contract with my county office of education for some of my special education, they are considered the District of Special Education Accountability. No, they are not. If you are the entity responsible for child find, if the child lives within your district boundaries, then you are responsible for them if you contract for them to receive services at the county office. The county office is simply the district of service, and so for this year only, their academic data will go back to your dashboard, the District of Special Education Accountability.
So I want to be very clear though. We have always sent back, the 2017 and the 2018 dashboard has always sent back students who are attending a county office of education. For the academic indicator, we always sent their scores back to the District of Accountability or District of Residence.
If they were attending a special education.
If they were attending a special education school, which is the case for most county offices,
yes.
Right? It's not the juvenile court schools, but the special education schools. So this is not new. This is the same thing we did for the 2017 and the 2018 dashboard.
All right, so a couple more questions. If a charter school is part of a SELPA, where will the students with disabilities appear on the dashboard? Will they be part of the charter's numbers? Yes. If the charter school is a charter school, they will go back to that charter school. They are charter school is the District of Special Education Accountability.
Right. So any student attending a charter, those scores will not be sent back to, and they will stay at that charter school. They will not be sent back to to the District of Residence because the charter school is the District of Residence.
So we're getting one more question. I just wanted to make clear. Somebody said, well, wait a second. What if they're in the juvenile hall for 1 or 2 days? Do I need to change the special education accountability? No, you do not. If they, like I said, if they have an incident that occurs, like at the football game on Friday, and they are arrested, and they go to juvenile hall like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then they go back to their school on Tuesday, then of course their normal districts would continue to hold their District of Special Education accountability. However, if the student is in a juvenile hall or juvenile court school for, say, greater than 30 days, which is as long as it takes for an interim IEP to pass, and the requirements to hold a new IEP, then you should, the District of Special Education accountability should change. Okay, so somebody's asked, we did not plant this person, but somebody's asking about what's the difference in accountability for non-academic and academic then? Well, right on to our next slide. We have to say why we're doing this. Go ahead.
Okay. So this year we're expanding our rules for the academic indicator to include all students with disabilities who have an MOU. They will go back to their District of Accountability. And then the second phase is going to be to apply this rule to all the other indicators in 2020. And then we'll be aligned with the special education monitoring so that we can go ahead and when you look at your dashboard, you can see which students you're going to be held accountable for on all your indicators for the dashboard, and they're going to pretty much align for students with disabilities with what we have for the monitoring.
So as we've said before, this is a sort of a stepwise process. First, we start just expanding the academic indicator to include all students with disabilities. And then as we're moving cases into CalPAS and folks can have a better understanding of where students are at, then we will start to step up, and in the 2020 dashboard, all state indicators will be by the District of Special Education Accountability. So this actually provides sufficient notice for folks to get processes and communication in place. You know, we recently presented this information to the Advisory Commission on Special Education, and they asked us, wait, so how is this supposed to go? Or how does this work? And I say, well, let me tell you how it's supposed to work, and then I'll tell you how it sometimes works. So the way it's supposed to work is if I'm a district and I cannot provide a service to a child and I send them to another district, then I should be in constant communication with that district about how that child is doing. But what's going on with them? Are they doing well? Are they progressing? Are they having issues? And then thinking about that, if this is always the best placement. The best placement for a child always is to go to the school near their home. And that's actually written in the statute. However, there are situations where that's not possible, but the district who sends them to another district or county office should be in constant communication about their progress. Now, how I have seen it happen, and this is not a blanket statement for every person in the state, so please do not say that Shiloh said that everybody's like this in the state, but I have seen it happen where a district sends a child to a county office, and then they sort of break off all ties. They're like, okay, we're done, we'll just keep sending you a check. Or they send the child to the county office, and the county office says, well, now you don't have any, you don't need to do anything else with it. We'll take it from here. So you don't need to we don't want you to be part of it. And so that's not how it should go. It should be a collaborative process. And so having a two-level accountability where you have the school-level accountability and the district-level accountability allows for that shared accountability, meaning that there's still some accountability by the school that they're going to ensure that they're doing well, but there's also the district accountability based on their District of Special Education accountability. We had a couple of questions. Oh, I can move this question slide up. So is the District of Special Education accountability reported from the IEP system starting July 2019? Yes and no. So it should come from the, so starting in July 2019, it will come from the, there will be a piece of it that comes from the electronic IEP system, and if you don't know what that is, that's typically called SPACE or CYRUS. However, it will also be on the enrollment record, so it will be something that needs to be communicated between both systems, so that when the student's enrolled in the reporting LEA, it shows that their District of Special Education accountability may be somewhere else. And data quality is going to be really important here. So if somebody's just like, you know, doesn't understand or, you know, puts the wrong number in, what's going to happen is that child isn't going to go back to the right district. We have that a lot. Wait a second, I suddenly had 50 new kids appear on my accountability or my monitoring, and we go back and look, and it's one person who was putting all the records in and put the wrong number in for 50 students. So that kind of piece is going to be really important. I think we can't stress that enough. All data quality is really important. We're making really important decisions, big decisions based on your data. The better quality is, the better it is. NPS students should be with the District of Service. No, NPS students, the District of Special Education Accountability is typically the District of Residence. And the District of Residence will usually enter into an MOU or a master contract, or the SELFA, where that district is, will enter into a master contract with the NPS. So there typically isn't a District of Residence for NPS students. Okay, looks like we're good on questions. We're talking a little bit about District of Special Education Accountability. A lot of people said, like, hey, are we going to be able to get the slides? I know you can download them from here. What is that process again?
Click on File in the top left-hand corner, and then Transfer, and then it should bring up a box that allows you to select the slides and then click Download.
They are also posted on our CDE accountability website. So if you go to the accountability website, you can download them from there as well.
I'm having a jealousy moment because they're so fast in getting stuff posted, and special ed is so slow sometimes. So which district is responsible for reporting students with disabilities in CalPAD? That is typically the district of service, but also known as the reporting LEA. And we could have talked a little bit about this before. I always feel like repetition is really important. So if some of these slides feel repetitious, it's because we really want to drive home the point. So here is some examples of districts responsible for reporting students with disability in CalPAD. So if the student resides in District A, if the student is attending school in District A, the student receives special education in District A, the District of Service is A, and the District of Special Education Accountability is A. So that's how it works for 90% of students. But for those 10% of students where that doesn't happen, where they reside in District A, they may go, if they're attending a school at District A, but they're receiving some services from District B. Like say, oh, the student needs to come in, we need to have speech therapy, and the speech therapist is through the county office. So we contract with them, they receive special education services from the county office. District B provides special education service, they're really a service provider. District A is still the district of service and the district of special education accountability. Now, a student may reside, again, in District A, but attend a school in District B. So this is really the instance that we've been talking about. They're receiving the services from District B, and the district of service is District B, but the district of special education accountability is still District A. Then you can see through 2018-19, so this kind of goes back to some of these questions like, how is this going to be done? Through 18-19, the District of Service submits the District of Special Education Accountability for students in its field 3.22, the student program file, District of Special Education Accountability. And it must be populated for students with an education program code of 144. So this is, keep in mind, 18-19 is the last year we're going to have program 144 because in 2019-20, we will be going, case miss is going to go away, and we're moving case miss data into CalPAD, and there will be a new special education file that will come directly from your local IEP systems. Those are things like SAFE, Cyrus, Welligent, SEES, SPED4, EduPoint. So if you have any of those systems for your electronic IEP systems, the data for students with disabilities will come from the special education data. So ensuring data quality. So what can CalPAD's administrators do? CalPAD's administrators should work with local special education data administrators to ensure that the field is populated correctly and is aligned with data in the special education data system. So data from ODS will be pulled on August 30th, 2018.
And that's the data we will use to do our calculations to produce the dashboards. So really important that you make sure that you check all of this ahead of time, because once we extract the data from CalPADS on August 30th, there's no opportunity to make corrections.
So it's very, very, very important that folks are kind of looking at this now. Do we have the data right? Does everybody understand what this means? What's happening? If we don't have a system in place today, how do we get a system of communication and cooperation in place going forward throughout the next year? Because if I have a student who starts going to a district in September, I shouldn't wait until April to see how they're doing. I should be saying, like in October or November, hey, district, how are they doing? What's going on with them? Just checking in, just seeing how things are going. You know, have they had any suspensions? And you might figure out what that process is, but it should be a process that you have in place. So it's not a surprise, you know, next year on the dashboard, oh my God, we're red for students with disabilities for suspension because we didn't talk about it for a year, so something to think about. Rules for students with disabilities who exit special education.
Yes, so we are making a slight change to a rule that we have implemented with the 2017 and 18 dashboard. We have decided at the beginning of the 2019 dashboard that students who exit a special education program will no longer be included with the Students with Disabilities student group. So for the 2017-18 dashboard, students that exited special education for up to 2 years were included with that Student with Disabilities group. However, we did not count them in the counts to determine if you had 30 or more students to receive a performance color. That has caused a lot of confusion. We get a lot of questions about that. So we have decided that we are only going to include students who were students with disabilities at any point in time throughout that year in that group for accountability purposes. And that is going to be, this is for the academic indicator. This is where the change is happening. We didn't have this issue with the other indicator. It was only in the academic indicator. So it's a very minor change. It doesn't affect a lot of students, but we wanted to make sure that you know that this is happening. So we have a place where we can ask questions again. Any questions at this time before we move on?
Oh, okay, so somebody asked, if it's just kind of going back, we're also kind of, the questions are coming fast and furious, so if we hop a little bit, please forgive us. So if a student attends another district on an inter-district transfer, who is the district of special education accountability? Once a student enters a district on an inter-district transfer, the receiving district becomes the district of special education accountability. Basically, they become the district of residence when they accept an inter-district transfer. And that's in Ed Code. Just scrolling down, give us a moment. Our County Office of Education has a deaf and hard of hearing class at our school site. So students are mainstreamed part of the day. Who's responsible for testing those students, and whose dashboard will be affected by the scores? Okay, so this is a complicated question, and I hope over time that this will lead county offices and districts to think about how they do this. So you have so what happens is that County Office of Education Deaf and Hard of Hearing program probably has its own school code. So if it has its own school code, then that is where the accountability is going back to. If it does not have a school code and is using the site school code as a school code, then it will go, the school level accountability will go to that school. What we have found, though, oftentimes is occurring is a County Office of Education will have one single school code for like 30 programs throughout the county, and that are housed at a ton of different school sites that do different things, right? So at one school site, it's a program for students with emotional disturbance. At another school site, it's a program for deaf and hard of hearing. And so we hope that folks will think about that as what is the best practice? Is it a better practice if they're completely mainstreamed into that school? Aren't they really going to that school? I mean, in the student's mind, they're going to that school. Every day I show up at Lala Elementary and I go see the teachers know me. I'm not in some special like housed bubble that nobody talks to. There is an interaction between the school, and that's a really important part of IDEA is the environment in which a student is placed. And part of least restrictive environment is interaction with peers and access to curriculum. And so sometimes people confuse that. And so we want folks to start thinking about, is it better for us to, as a district, have that level, own the students and then contract with the district, the county office to provide services? Is it better for the county office to have a different set of programs based on the different types of services they're offering? so that you don't see, so what happens a lot of times we get questions like this all the time is you look up a county office and they have a school called Special Education School and it's got like 1,000 kids in it. And somebody's going, oh my God, you have like 1,000 students warehoused in some place in the middle of California? It's like, no, it's 40 different school sites with different programs and different interactions, as it should be. The question is that the way it should be reported? Should it be split up based on the type of services? So I think that's something that we will continue to question. Was there anything else? So what was the data pool for District of Special Education Accountability on 8/30? That's for the academic indicator for the dashboard for the 2019 dashboard, correct?
That's correct. So we actually pull that data, and so remember for the academic indicator, we have a lot of other rules in place for the calculation of the academic indicator. So students have to be continuously enrolled from fall census day to the first day of testing, and we connect the district of residence with where the student was at the time of testing. And if the student was continuously enrolled at the time of testing, that information will go back to the District of Special Ed Accountability and be included in their dashboard.
So we're getting a few questions and who are saying like, well, wait a second, this is going to make my dashboard numbers go down, or the new rule around students who exit special education, that's going to make my dashboard go down. Or now I'm receiving students from the county office, like that's going to make my dashboard go down. And it may, like those things may, but it provides, I think, a more accurate picture in terms of the regulation and requirements for students with disabilities and the true picture of what's happening. So one of the things that I'm really trying to encourage folks to do, because Jenny and I have been out talking about this for a little while, and we always get the questions of like, well, we don't really want those kids. Does somebody else have responsibility for them? And it's, you shouldn't be afraid of the data. I know it's high stakes, and I know it's important, and it does have a reflection on a district and a school, but it just tells you where you start, where you are today, and it helps give you a picture of where you as a school or you as a district are to improve outcomes for all students. I can tell you, you have good, strong instruction for your students with disabilities, you will have good, strong instruction for all students. All boats rise in this process. So I really hope that people will see it that way. I know it's hard to see it right now because it feels like, oh my God, now I was in yellow, now I'm going to be in orange, and now it's going to be a thing, and I go for a board, and blah, blah. But if people can see that this is really the best, most accurate picture of what the needs are for the student and how regulatory-wise we have to identify responsibility and requirements, it just makes sense.
And I just want to remind everyone that we have already been sending some of these students with disabilities back to the District of Accountability. So in the 2017 and 18 dashboard, students who attended a county office of education, special education school, their assessment results were sent back to the District of Accountability. So we're just expanding this rule a little bit. The big change, of course, will come with the 2020 dashboard.
Yeah. And remember that August 30th date is what we're going to pull for the 18-19 school year for the 2019 dashboard.
Correct.
Okay. Did you?
Okay.
Go on?
I think we're ready to move on to incorporating the California alternate assessment into the academic indicator. We are lucky to have Eric Zilbert here with us. So he can answer any technical questions you might have about this process. So I think it's important to say that, you know, 2019 is going to be the first time we're going to be including the Cal Alt assessments into the dashboard, and we had to, and it's taken us a while because if you look at the scale scores for the Smarter Balance versus the Cal Alt, they're quite a bit different. So for grade 3, the scale scores go from 2114 to 2623. For the Cal Alt in grade 3, it goes from 300 to 399. So it's a really different scale. And in addition, we have 4 levels for the Smarter Balance, but we only have 3 levels for the Cal-Alt. So we had to, we had to take some time to think about how we're going to incorporate this, the Cal-Alt, into the distance from standard that we have in place that we use for the Smarter Balance. And I think Eric's staff have worked really hard on this. Is there anything you want to say about that, Eric?
No, we're just trying to take into account the standard that's expected of the CAA children and the relative distance from that standard, and try to place that into Smarter Balance terms, so that we're holding the students on the CAA and the people who instruct them to the standards that are appropriate for them. And we're just trying to translate those into a similar level for SBAC, so we can just merge those results in.
Thank you. Okay, so we took, I think we asked him. Oh, okay. Okay, so the Every Student Succeeds Act requires that we include the assessment results of all students, including those with significant cognitive disabilities, and they must be included into the accountability system. So for the California Alternate Assessment, or I always like to say Cal-Alt, they're already included in the participation rate calculations. We had to include the participation rate for the first time in the 2018 dashboard, so they were included in that calculation. And we have been working with our colleagues in the assessment division and with our technical design group on a methodology for incorporating the Cal-Alt into the distance from standard. And we actually talked with our TDG members, I think at least 3 meetings about this. So there's been a lot of conversation about this. And we went back and we did multiple simulations to come back to make sure that we are going to incorporate it in a way that is most appropriate. So we have 3 options that we really looked at. The first one is what we call effect size approach, and that is the mathematical option that we took to the TDG. Then we had the middle of the range approach and the top of the range approach, and we're going to go through all 3 of these. So for the effect size, as I said, this is a mathematical approach that Eric Zilbert and his staff took, and what it does is it uses standard deviations between the 2 assessments to standardize the student score into units of the SBAC scale. I know that sounds a little complicated, and it is a little bit, so we have an example that we're going to be providing you. So when we're looking at the Cal-Alt for math in grade 3, we're also going to be looking at the results in Smarter Balance grade 3 to make this correlation for the standard deviations. So to convert the scores, the distance for level 3 for a Cal-Alt score is divided by the standard deviation for the scores on the Cal-Alt. In this way, the distance from MET is represented in terms of standard deviation units. And I think I'll go ahead and bring up the picture, because I think it's easier to understand when you're looking at the picture. So we have a student who took the Cal-Alt, and their score was 370. And that score represents a +3 standard deviation. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to look at level 3 in the Smarter Balance and say which score represents a +3 standard deviation. And we find that that is a score of 2469. So because these are both represented in level 3, and they both have a representation of a +3 standard deviation, we are going to assign the Smarter Balance score of 2469. Remember, we have to have a Smarter Balance score because we're calculating distance from standard. And we can't calculate that distance from standard using the Cal-Alt score. So I think I'm going to pause right here. If you have any questions, Eric will be happy to answer them. Got that, Eric?
No problem. I'll just say that, this is one of the common methods for trying to equate between tests. The difference here is that we really have a different type of performance that we're expecting from one group of students than the other. We're just trying to make it so that you would get the same credit in CAS as you would have gotten if this was all by itself in the CAA.
I don't see any questions right now about this, but somebody said the explanation with the picture makes sense, and someone asked if we had a conversion chart.
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
There will be one each year.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to our next is, I'm sorry, that's okay. The middle of the range. So we were looking at this, the conversion from for the standard deviation, and realized that would be a little bit hard to explain to the general public, and we really do want to try to be transparent and try to make it as easy as possible. So we decided that we would look at two other options, and one of those is the middle of the range. And we call it the middle of the range because we're looking for the performance levels, all three performance levels for the Cal-Alt. So if a student scores, let's take the example of grade 3. So let's say we have a student who is in grade 3, and they score anywhere in level 2 on the Cal-Alt for ELA. They would be given, or the student wouldn't receive, because this is for accountability only, so I don't want to make it sound like the student is going to get this score. But for accountability purposes, we would assign the midpoint score for the level 2 range on the Smarter Balance, and that would be 2399. That is the middle of the scale score range for grade 3 ELA, and that range is 2367 to 2437. So regardless of whether a student scores below that or above that, they get assigned that 2399. Okay. Then we have the top of the score range, and basically we're doing the same thing. We're looking at both content areas, ELA and math. We're looking at each level individually. So for a student who has a grade 3, who's in grade 3, scoring anywhere in level 2 on the Cal-Alt for ELA, would receive the highest score available on level 2 for the Smarter Balance ELA, and that score would be 2431. So students that score the highest score would get the 2431, and students who are below that score would receive the highest. They didn't receive the highest score on the Cal-Alt. They will also get the 2431. So, but it's always by the level. So we're always connecting the score from level 2 to the score in the Cal-Alt to the score to level 2 in the Smarter Balance. And so the reason why, so we're going to recommend the top of the range. We're going to take that to the board probably in September for their consideration. And we're doing it for two reasons. A, as I mentioned before, it's easier to communicate when you're talking about the top of the score range versus the effect size. And also recall that we only have 3 levels in the Cal-Alt, so students cannot get a level 4 score, right, if they're taking the Cal-Alt. And if we average all the scores across all the grades, level 4 has a range of 114 points in ELA and 132 points in math. And with the effect size method, if we use that methodology, it would ensure that even the highest scoring Cal-Alt student will be between 114 and 132 points lower than their non-Cal-Alt peers. So this was the rationale. We took it to our technical design group, and they agreed with us. They felt it was really important that we incorporate the Cal-Alt students into the academic indicator, but that we do it in such a way that that it will be fair. And of course, because we have different scale scores and different levels among the 2 tests, it became a little more difficult. So that is what we're recommending. And so we're happy to take questions right now.
Somebody said, please explain again Please explain again what determines the middle of the range or the top of the range.
Okay, so if we have a student who has a score in the CalALT that falls in level 2, so let's say, level 2 for grade 3 is between 345 and 359. So that's what they score in the CalALT. Then we would just look at the level 2 for grade 3, and that is a score between 2367 and 2431. We find what is the exact score in the middle, and that is the one that we assign to the student who took the CalALT. So we're taking the CalALT score and we're putting it on a scale for the Smarter Balance so we can calculate distance from standard. Of course, when we do the same thing for the top of the scale, we're just going to take whatever the top of the scale is for that level. So for level 3, for grade 3, level 2, that score would then become 2431. It's a little bit harder if you don't have those scale scores that you're looking at, so you should have put that up. But if you're looking at the scale scores for the Smarter Balance, you can see that they're different for every grade and for each content area. So we have different scale scores for grades 3 through 8 and 11, and for ELA and for math. So you would have to look at those scale scores to see where the middle falls and to see where the top of the scale falls.
So here's some more questions. Does anything less than a true mathematical calculation open us up to more questions? In other words, is there any artificial inflation of scores not telling us the true story of how our students are doing?
So we did a lot of simulations on this, and we'll provide this when we bring it to the State Board of Education for consideration. But we wanted to give something that was easier to communicate, and it turns out that for the mathematical computation, if we use the middle of the range, they actually, it has, compared to the effect size, it has a negative impact. So the scores are lower if we use the middle of the school range versus using the effect size, which is the mathematical equation. For the top of the scale, it is slightly higher, but it is not significantly higher.
So somebody asked, are you using both the effect size and middle / top of the range methods, or just one?
We're just going to be using one. And our proposal is to use the top range.
Was the inclusion of the CA results in the 2019 academic indicator always planned, or is this a recent change or decision that was not communicated to LEAs prior?
No, it was always planned. We've always said that we were going to do that. We're required to do that under ESSA, and if we don't do it, we will be out of compliance. So we must get the scores in there.
Okay. When will it be decided which method to use?
That is a decision that is made by the State Board of Education, so that will be decided at the September board. When we did the simulations, Katrina, you might be able to help me out there. There wasn't a big impact on school colors, was there?
No, it was relatively minor, and there was impact in both directions. Some of them did better, some of them did worse, and I believe there were maybe 50 or so schools that now were held to a color because they had enough students, including the CalALT, but relatively low differences, usually just one color difference, if at all.
Yes, and generally this inclusion improves a little bit the special ed subgroups distance from that overall.
Right. And it brings down the other student groups slightly, but not enough to change a color, because we're looking at scale scores and distance from standard. So if the student group goes down usually 1 or 2 scale score points, that usually does not affect the performance color. We also did look at the effect on districts for differentiated support, and it did not have a big impact in that area either. So most districts that are currently identified for differentiated assistance will still remain identified. I believe there was a difference of about 6 districts, so not a big impact there. So we wanted to make sure that we included the scores, and we wanted to make sure that it didn't artificially inflate scores for districts and for schools, and we found that it does not, and we didn't want to, you know, provide a huge penalty either. So we found that this method met both of those criteria. And
and just to clarify, the effect size method, there's no impact of level 4 one way or the other. That only impacts the other two methods where the student can't reach level 4. The effect size method takes into account the entire, you know, span of both tests.
Some people are asking, well, so does the results on the CAA count towards the academic indicator for students with disabilities? Yes. Yes, so that's what we're talking about, is how we're going to incorporate the scores for students who took the CAA into the academic indicator for the student with disabilities student group.
And no matter which method we use, it tends to improve for schools that have a significant number of CAA students, the performance relative to distance from MET for the special education group.
Yeah, that is correct. We had one question that sort of popped up on the District of Special Education Accountability that I wanted to circle back around to if we are at the end, is if I'm a District of Special Education Accountability and a student is attending another district, do I need to enroll them in my district as secondary enrollment? No, you don't need to do that. That's not a requirement. I mean, so you could, it's not best practice, but you don't have to do that. And then I don't think we had any more questions. Some folks were asking us about, are we going to post the recording of this? No, we are not. We are going to probably go through the questions and see if there's anything we need to clarify, but it's not something we will be doing.
A slide deck, again, is available on the CDE website, so you can download it from our CDE website. But we will not be posting because for 508 compliance, we would then be required to do a transcript, and we don't have the resources to do that.
So somebody asked, the CAA science field test will not be reported, correct?
So science, of course, is not included in the dashboard. So that is, so it's not going to be incorporated in the dashboard. But whether it's going to be reported, I have to ask Eric.
They're going to get preliminary indicators this year. So it won't be an actual score that will be comparable to future years, but it will give some information about the relative performance of the student. So pretty much parallel to what we did last year with the CAST assessment.
So if Program 144 code is being retired, do we need to close all of our 144s and CalPAS this year? I don't think so. I think it's just going to go away. Like, that won't be an option for you to report anymore. So we can, Brandy is not here today, and so we can ask that question to her, but my understanding is no. Somebody asked again, when is this all going to go into effect? Seems like a lot of change. So, so remember, for the change that's happening this year is around the academic indicator, right? So that's ELA and math performance. So we are doing a number of things this year. Number one, we are implementing District of Special Education Accountability for all students, only for the academic indicator ELA and math performance. We are implementing the new rule around exiting special education students, and this year we'll be incorporating the CAA. This year we'll be incorporating the alternative assessment in the academic indicator. So in terms of change, yes, there is a lot of changes happening around the academic indicator this year. Those three things: District of Special Education Accountability, exiting students, and also the CAA. Next year, in the 2020 dashboard, the District of Special Education Accountability will then be incorporated into all state indicators. So there is a large set of changes that are happening around the academic indicator, then the other indicators. Will there be live training available anywhere?
As always, we will be doing our webinars when we do the release of the dashboard. So we've always done that during the preview period. We don't have any live trainings at this moment planned, but if that's a need, then we can discuss that. But we don't have any planned at this particular point in time.
Okay, so actually, we did have somebody on the phone who was able to answer whether the program 144. No need to exit the special education program records. Code 144 will be retired in CalPAD, and we'll stop looking at those records from 1920 and onward. Going back to the District of Special Education for Juvenile Court Schools, I knew this would be coming back around. Let's take this old horse out around the barn. When a student enrolls with us, juvenile hall, we will leave the District of Special Education as the district of residence. Then after 30 days, we'll have to submit a new SPED program record with us. Yes, because after 30 days, you have to hold an actual IEP with them by law. This county office as the District of Special Education Accountability, yes. And keep the original SPED entry date for the new record. It would be great if we could do a flash. It's definitely something we can talk about, for sure. There's going to be a lot of flashes coming out as new cases to CalPAD, so just going to feel like a paparazzi thing. Huh?
The Special Education Division is going to be putting out a communication.
We're working on lots of communication. We are working on some letters and some guidance on a number of issues. This is one of them. Also on transition, so there is a lot of happening. So just try to keep your ears to the ground. And we will try and cross-pollinate all of this communication as much as possible. So as things affect reporting and accountability of stuff that we're putting out, we're all working together as friends now. So if we're putting out something,
always been friends, though. We've always been friends.
But we're all working together in a collaborative environment of love and joy. Only with Eric is it no, just that we're trying to cross-pollinate. So if we're putting out a flash or putting out communication to the field for our special ed, we want to be sharing that with both the Accountability Division and the Educational Data Management Division, so everybody who's affected can be aware of these changes and this guidance.
And, the reason why we decided to do this webinar now is because CalPAD is now open for you guys to submit data. We wanted to make you well aware of this so that there's no surprises come time for the end of the year certification and submission. So we just wanted to give you a heads up. So if you don't have your CalPAD's coordinators on the line, I would highly recommend that you contact them as soon as possible and have a conversation about making sure that you appropriately put in the District of Special Education accountability.
So when did you say program 144 would be retired at the end of this end of year submission? So 18-19.
So it's still being used for the 18-19 submission.
So through end of year. Okay. So what CalPAD data elements are defined that are related to students with disabilities that are being pulled for the dashboard? If you want us, CalPAD coordinators, to be checking the data, what data should we be looking at? So right now it's the program record and the District of Special Education Accountability and the district reporting LEA. That's what identifies to us that there's a student with a disability.
And I would focus this year closely on the end of year 3 submission, the cumulative enrollment reports, because we're moving towards using end of year cumulative enrollment certified data to determine student groups for most of the indicators. So I think most people don't really focus on that so much in terms of the student groups, but really focus on the end of year 3 cumulative enrollment report.
Yes, that's where we're going to get all our student demographics for all of our state indicators and all of the program participation, whether that be special ed, students.
Right. So when there was the earlier, the August 30th date mentioned, that date is the end of the certification window. It's also the date we're doing the ODS poll for the cohort, but really focus on that end of year 3 certification.
Also, I think it's really important to understand that if you certify early and you decide and you realize that you made some errors and you need to go ahead and correct your data, you must decertify and recertify after you've submitted your corrections. Really important because we're using certified data. So if you make corrections without decertifying and recertifying, we're not going to capture them.
Okay. Is there any planned webinar makeup date for coworkers who are unable to attend, or they only have access to slides? And will the presenter notes be on the slide?
Well, the presenter notes aren't on the slides at the moment. If there is, I don't know, are you willing to do another?
Yeah, we can do another webinar.
Yeah.
I also, if you're sort of kind of asking some questions around the District of Special Education Accountability, you know, we just presented almost this exact same thing to the Advisory Commission on Special Education, and that is recorded, and disability is accessible for people with disabilities. You know, that's some of the challenges we have, and so we, you know, that should be posted within a week or so.
Yeah.
I would use that because it's almost the exact same slide. So the CAA stuff isn't on there, but the all of the
Yes, it
districts.
is.
Oh, it is on there.
But it's on the slides. We ran out of time, so we didn't have a conversation with them about that.
A lot of this special education stuff, the District of Special Education Accountability information is all on there, and it's me and Jenny presenting, so you can see our happy faces. And we're happy to do another webinar, maybe closer to when school gets back in session,
Yes.
so we can have more folks who are potentially off school listen in. And we can talk about, okay, so that was last year, what are we going to do for this year, what it will look like. Okay, for non-academic, is it still going to be district of residence and school attending? So for 2019, it will be district of service and school of attendance for all other non-academic indicators, and then in 2020, it will be district of special education accountability and school of attendance. And as always, if you guys have questions that continue to sort of percolate, or you like leave the webinar and talk to somebody and something else comes up, feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So I think we are at the end of our time. We're getting, where can I find the committee presentation? If you just go to cde.ca.gov, and then even in the search box, you put in ACSE, which is ACSE, the Advisory Commission on Special Education. It will bring up their agenda and then their recordings as well. How do we contact you?
Oops. So if you have accountability questions, you can contact us through our email, which is aau@cde.ca.gov.
And then if you have special education questions for right now, they can go through our for our CASEMIS email, which is CASEMIS, C-A-S-E-M-I-S. Again, that's C-A-S-E-M-I-S @cde.ca.gov.
And if you have assessment questions, you can always go to cast@cde.ca.gov. And that's 2 A's and 2 P's, and we mean it.
This one, did I say ACSE? A-C-S-E, Advisory Commission on Special Education. We just did that presentation. It's probably going to take a few days for the recording to get posted up there, but so I would check it maybe first or middle of next week, and you will have it there. And we do go through this entire thing again, and we take questions from them as well. We're similar to your questions. Okay. Will the technical guide be updated to state students with disabilities are only counted if they're holding the designation for that school year? Eric?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
They're always full of great ideas. Again, we had a little over 200 questions that came in. Some of them were like, can we have the PowerPoint? And we will do the best as we can to go through them. If there are outlying questions, we will try and maybe put something together. But if we didn't get to your question, it was not a personal affront. It was just, they came fast and furious. We do appreciate all of the willingness to ask questions, to be engaged, to walk through this with us, and we really, really appreciate it. So we're going to be signing off. Thank you again for all of your commitment to this work, and we will talk to you soon. Jenny, do you have any last words?
We appreciate you taking the time to listen and participate in this webinar. And we always take a look at the questions to see if we can make anything clearer in our technical guide for accountability. So we will make sure that we include probably a lot of your questions in the technical guide. So we will do that. Thank you, everyone, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Have a great day. Bye-bye.